Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech Tips with Metro Home Theater Group. I'm Brent McCall and
I'm Adam Rogers.
And what's today's topic, young man?
We are talking about how to, well, first off, we're talking about category wire, but most importantly, respecting category wire.
I see.
Yes.
Do you deserve respect?
Oh, yeah, quite a bit,
Does the wire deserve respect?
Much more so.
Okay, then.
So, and actually a little bit of backstory about that. I was working with a guy, and I was new. I was learning how everything was working. And there was wire laying out along the ground, and I was just walking past, and I stepped on the wire, and he about jumped 3 feet in the air and hollered at me and said, "You get off that wire." And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, what's the deal? He says, no, you don't step on the wire. You respect the wire. That's where today's topic is.
Did he slap you upside the head and say, boy?
He wanted to.
Okay, I like it.
So.
Quick little cleanup here, just so you guys know, there does appear to be some YouTube outages around the U.S. and in Europe currently.
Yep.
So if you're not getting us on YouTube, you can't hear this anyway. We are on Facebook.
Yes, we are. So guys, thanks for checking in. Hey, Lonnie, good to see you guys. So today we're going to be basically talking about category wire, a little bit of history, a little bit about where it came from, the different backstories of 568A, 568B, USOC, as well as AT&T, and different ideas of essentially where it came from. So without further ado, let's Brent, you want to kind of fill us in a little bit about the history of it?
Absolutely. And before we get there, because what brought this up is we still get a lot of tech calls referencing termination quality for HD-Base-T.
Right.
And in fact, one yesterday and one the day before.
Right.
So it still happens a lot, and what we have determined is if you follow correct processing, correct termination procedures, your HD-Base-T is going to work, and if you do the way you do it for HD-Base-T on your networks, and a lot of guys don't,
right,
your networks will run faster and more reliable. It just works out better that way. So a little background on this, 568A, 568B, and we get a lot of arguments from people, which is better? And do you know which one's in our manuals?
So all of our manuals right now, they have 568B. But truthfully, Brent, why is that?
That's simply for our convenience. The difference between 568A and 568B, and we're going to look at the picture he's wonderfully drawn here, is the orange and the green pairs are swapped between A and B. That's it. The orange and green pairs both have the same twist ratios within the cable, so the performance difference is non-existent.
Right.
The reason we put 568B in all of our manuals is simply, what do we use?
Right.
And it's just mostly to cut down our phone calls.
Exactly. So, and again, guys, also, if you're checking in on us today, go ahead and ask your questions about it. We're going to try and answer some questions about, some basic, tech tips, again, about the category wire. So definitely ask your questions. If you have a preference of 568A or 568B, let us know.
We're curious why.
Yeah, let us know, and let us know why. If it was just because you were trained that way, or if you have a specific reasoning for it, let us know. We'd like to know what it is.
Brief history. In the early days of networking, the U.S. government stipulated 568A. And that's just because they wanted all their offices to be on the same networking infrastructure, so there wasn't a chance of somebody miswiring another end wrong.
Right.
And we've certainly seen this happen on job sites where two installers are doing the job. One does A, one does B on the same piece of wire, and it doesn't work.
Right.
Really, we don't care. Just pick one and stick with it.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon for people to do B for HDMI and A for telecom.
Right. And actually, while I was doing some studies about this on that, and actually come to find out that is a lot of where this came from. A lot of guys were doing telecom, they were doing A, and then a lot of guys were doing infocom, and they were doing B. And so the reasoning for a lot of this is just because someone was trained in one way or the other.
It is not uncommon, particularly doing tech support for HD-Base-T, is the guy will say, well, we were using 568A, we cut the terminals off, we did 568B, and it works, so it must be 568B is better. What they're really saying is the second time around, they took a whole lot more care doing it because they weren't sure why it wasn't working.
Right. So, and the reason why it's the same on both sides, and depending on 5.6A or 5.6B, truthfully, it comes down to the twist ratio inside, right?
Yes, sir.
So, do me a favor, hand me the crimpers, actually. I'm going to go ahead and strip out the outside edge. So as you guys know, the reason with category wire, of course, you've got twisted pairs. So you've got your orange, you've got your green, you've got your brown, and you've got your blue. Now, of course, if we can get a top-down shot, guys, we'll go ahead and take a look at this a little bit here. So with that, the reasoning for this is that blue and green are actually, or pardon me,
Orange and green.
Orange and green are actually sharing the same twist ratio.
Yes, they are.
And so the reason why 5.6A and 5.6B are the same is because the only thing you're switching out is you're switching out from the orange and you're switching out to the green, or vice versa, depending on what you're doing. And so the reason why that it's okay to do that is because, oh, Amber alert. The reason for that is that we have the same twist ratio, and it doesn't matter which way you go with it. So that's really the same reasoning why it's okay.
Well, now, let's step back, particularly in the networking world. Originally, you really only worried about the 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the terminals. 1, 2, 7, and 8 really were unused initially, and eventually became the pathways for PoE.
PoE, and then even now into the 10 gigabit
well,
world,
things are changing a little bit, right?
Yeah, of course. As well as, obviously with HDBaseT.
Yes, which uses all of them.
Exactly. So you're using on HDBase, and actually that's another phone call, and we'll talk about this actually in our next episode. We're going to be talking about HDBaseT stuff, but that's why we get a lot of phone calls of guys asking us, hey, can I use an extra pair on an HDBaseT just for IR or something else? Unfortunately, you can't. And it's just because literally it splits up everything on all 4 pairs.
However, for basic networking, you can.
Yeah, definitely. So
I wouldn't encourage it because your chances of messing up your termination increase, but you can.
So some of the other things to kind of talk about, guys, and you already know this, but some of your new guys or something else may not know this. When you're pulling category wire, it's still very important to, again, respect it. You're not going to want to run it and then yank it while you're pulling it through. If it catches somewhere, you don't want to just pull on it as hard as you can, because what's going to happen is you're going to start stretching the wire, or you're going to start changing the twist ratio. If you actually pull on it hard enough, you can actually straighten out some of the twisting on that.
The biggest issues is going around corners, 2x4s, or my favorite is the metal plates up in the attic. Guys that go around those, and those will absolutely affect the twist ratios inside, or possibly, as you move up to Cat 6, damage the inner spline. And that spline is very critical to maintaining the positioning of all the wire, which affects both inductance and capacitance within the cable.
Now, sometimes what I've seen in the past for myself, I've actually pulled it through and caught those big metal plates, and it's caught this, and I didn't realize, and I just went to yank it. Again, I was a new guy, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Yanked on it, and by the time that I was actually able to pull it through, I noticed that it had actually cut down into the wire itself, and I could see bare copper. And
or you'll also start to see a little discolorization.
Because
you're stretching the jacket. If the jacket's stretching, something else is getting damaged.
Exactly. So with that, guys, I think what I want to do is let's talk about terminations.
Okay. So that's the most important part of it.
Exactly. So other than pulling on it, the terminations are very, very important, and even to the extent of using the correct type of termination. So what we have here is we actually have 5, 6. Pardon me. Goodness gracious, we're talking about the wrong thing. We have category 6 wire here. You can tell that because we have the spline inside of it.
Now, there are splines available in a variety of other cables. You can do a media twist inside of a category 5E. But it's probably mandatory, or typically mandatory, in a category 6 cable to have that spline, because again, it maintains the proper distance and relationship of all the twisted pairs.
Exactly. And for the most part, what you're going to run into out in the field, you'll find Cat 5 or Cat 5E will not have a spline in it, and the Cat 6 would have the spline in it for most cases that you find out in the field. So with that, where you're working with the Cat 6 cable here, now one of the big differences between Cat 5 and Cat 6 is just the fact that the gauge is a different size.
Yes, it is, and there's a tighter twist.
So with the gauging being a different size, it's actually larger individual strands of wire inside. So you have to make sure that you get the correct terminations. So if you're using a Cat 5 RJ45 termination, and you're trying to use it on the Cat 6,
it's a pain in the butt.
You'll force it in there, but honestly, if you're using it with HDBaseT, or if you're trying to get a 10 gig connection on it, or even a 1 gig, you're going to run into problems.
It's kind of like trying to force a quad terminal onto a non-quad cable for RG6.
Exactly, yeah. So it just doesn't have the room for it. So what we have here, we've got our Cat 6 wire, we've got our Cat 6 termination. And while I'm doing this, do you want to kind of talk about a little bit more about the history a little bit? While I'm
Absolutely. And one of the things he's doing as he's going to go down this, we both have slightly different approaches on this because I'm a little bit lazier than he is. But when you're looking at the history of category cable, this really goes back into the 80s, the early Cat 3, Cat 5 stuff.
I'm only cutting it back.
Thank you, sir. There was a lot going on, and there was a lot of discussion. We were moving from token ring, which is coax-based networking, into this. And there was some early Apple talk that was even on Cat 3. Which do you want?
Scissors.
Okay. We're going to go sideways for a second here. Hold on before you do that.
Okay.
Hold off before you do that. Let's talk about these.
Okay.
Do not use these to cut your wire.
Why?
Because these cut with pressure.
Okay.
We highly encourage when you're doing any kind of networking or HDBaseT, go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy a set of regular scissors.
Right.
I generally recommend the black and red handled $2 ones that you throw away after 20, 30 uses.
Yep.
Because they cut with a short blade, not with a side cutter pressure blade.
Right.
And can I get a top down for a second, please?
There you go.
Where this makes a difference is when you're cutting that wire, with a side cutter, you kind of wind up with a cut like that, where you wind up with a little tip on it that does not actually fully insert into the terminal. So we'll back it off a little bit, and that will affect timing on HDBaseT.
Right.
Whereas if you cut it with a pair of scissors, you wind up with a very straight cut, which gives you a better ability to fully seat the wire into the terminal for better connection.
Right.
So don't use side cutters. Do not use the fancy cutters for the fiber, which are beautiful tools.
Yep.
But they're not really meant for doing this. A cheap pair of scissors really is your best friend in cutting category cable.
So guys, what I like to do with mine, and of course what I'm doing here, I'm being a little rough with the cable, but you can be just a little rough with it. You don't want to be too rough with it. But all I'm doing back here...
Before you do that, one of the things we recommend, because fitting this wire into a terminal is really hard, take a pair of pliers, pull up on this, then cut it, because that way the media centerpiece will pull slightly back into the plastic jacket and allow the wires to better fit into the terminal.
Right, like this.
Yep.
There you go. And so the nice thing about this also is that when with that spline pushed back inside the jacket, you're actually giving yourself more room that when you go and crimp this down, you're not crimping onto the spline, which is creating more pressure on the cable.
Right, which will also deform the cables.
Exactly. So you want to make sure to go ahead and pull that out. Gives you a little bit more of more room for the jacket on that to be able to work with.
Now, before you get to that point, take each of your pairs, break them out, untwist them, and then work between your forefinger and your thumb to get all the twist ratios, all the twisting out of the jacket, so it's as straight as possible going into the terminal, because it is a snug fit as you move into category 6 wire, and anything you can do to improve that will help. So just taking it, working it down, and then once you've done all that, then get all your colors laid out, then cut it with the scissors, and you get a nice straight fit going in.
Right. So, and again, guys, also comments and questions, please let us know. We know that a lot of this for most of our installers is just common practice. It's just things that you work with every single day. But comments and questions are really let us know what tips and tricks that you like to use out in the field. Something else that we can incorporate into our own work. Or if you have good tips for guys that are watching the video as well, you can go ahead and let them know, hey, do it this way. That it helps things out.
One of the things we do encourage is using a Bixie certified terminal.
Yes.
Now, Bixie is the company or the certification company that is in the networking commercial world to make sure that all the products are built correctly. We prefer a Bixie terminal that is a non-pass-through type.
Correct.
So that all the wires go in and actually hit an even plane inside.
So the pass-through kind, and just a note on this, the pass-through kind of terminations, they work fine in most networking aspects. However, we don't recommend using it on the HDBaseT extenders or even the non-HDBaseT kind. We just don't recommend doing it. We've just run into too many problems with it.
It's not inherently a terminal problem. I'm going to reach over you here. It's a tool problem. What guys don't realize is when you're doing this, unless that cutting blade on the pass-through is brand new,
right?
It's like the old shaving commercial with the two blades. The first blade wants to pull on the wire, the second blade cuts it.
Yep.
The drawback is if your blade's not brand new, and you do need to treat these like anything else, your air filter, your brake pads, your oil filter, it will pull on the wire and thin it out instead of cutting it.
Right.
So that's the big advantage day to day of using a non-push-through type.
Right. And that makes sure that, of course, that you get a good clean cut every single time.
Yes. So. Now, on that same note, the die set that's in your tool, it's also very important to maintain that. As he's getting this together, may I get a top-down shot, please? You're going to see 8 dots here. These are representing the copper that's going to the end of that terminal.
Correct.
When you have put all the wires in and you have, before you crimped, made sure that all 8 of those conductors are fully inserted, particularly 1, 8, 3, and 6, because that's the split pair in the outside ones. You want to make sure those are all fully inserted, and then when you compress it, you want to look at that terminal head on and make sure that all 8 of those copper dots are in a perfectly flat line, because if one of them's higher or lower, it is telling you that the die set in your compression tool is worn out, just like your tires, and you're not getting full penetration of the blade into the wire.
Correct.
On a 10-100 network or even a gigabit network, the computers are redundant data. That means they keep asking, did you get, did you get, did you get, did you get? Eventually it will time out, but it asks a lot of times. HDMI is real time. You don't have the option of, well, if it didn't come, let's ask again.
Right.
So you have to make sure the bandwidth is there to start with.
Right. So we're at the point now where we're just going to go ahead and cut this back and put it straight
you're
across.
ready.
Right?
You got your, okay.
We're on 568B, and again, the reason I use 568B is just because I was trained on that, and that's just what I know to use. It's almost muscle memory to put it in that order for myself. So what I'm going to do here, and myself, what I like to do, I actually use my finger as a little bit of a gauge on that. And so what I'm doing here is it tells me just how far I need to go. Now, of course, you're gonna want to find your own way to do things. And
I use the knuckle in my thumb.
Yep, I like to put my finger right about there. It kind of tells me where I need to be at for the length for it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut straight across. Now, personally, out in the field, I don't like using scissors. I feel like they make a mess. But it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing, especially if you're running into issues. Using scissors will make sure that you don't run into issues.
That's a much cleaner cut.
Yep. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to make sure that everything is pushed in all the way to the very, very end.
I'm going to double check his work because he's not me. Hold on, hold on.
Well,
I got it.
You got it?
I got
Okay.
it. I got it. Oh, it's beautiful. Look at that. This is not your first time at this rodeo.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I have done quite a few of these myself, so.
Beautiful.
And luckily, I can say that I personally have not run into an HDBaseT problem. However, you watch. The first time I say that now live on air, next time that I do a termination with one of these and try and use it with HDBaseT, it's not going to work because that's just how things happen.
You have doomed yourself.
I have. So what we're going to do, guys, here, and it's going to be a little difficult to catch this on the screen. If you can get a top-down shot for us, guys. So what you're going to see here with that, on the very end of it, I'm going to try and move it just a bit so it catches a gleam for the screen just a little bit there. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell it or not. Not quite.
It's too small,
so
sadly.
What I can see here, because of course I'm on site, and what you're going to be able to tell when you're out there, is that on the very end of it, you actually have 8 shiny copper dots. Now, of course, Cat 6, it's not straight across like this. So with the Cat 6 cable, it's actually going to stagger.
It depends on the terminal.
Again, it depends. Yeah, well, of course, it depends on who's manufacturing it is or whatever. With our Cat 5 or our Cat 5 RJ45 terminations,
it's straight.
They're straight
with the
across.
Cat 6, it's a staggered.
Exactly. So you wind up with just a little bit of a staggering setup, something like this.
But you want 2 straight flat rows.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whoop, one too many. You would wind up with something like that. And what you're going to wind up with that, of course, when you look down inside there, 2 straight rows all the way across and nice shiny copper at the very end.
And the copper needs to be identical in shine all the way across.
Exactly.
This way you know that you've got a good penetration and a good, everything's to the end.
Right.
Now you got a dollar bill on you.
I don't actually.
Hold on.
I don't get paid enough to carry dollars around with me.
Okay. I happen to have a 20 today.
All right.
Now, we joke about this all the time. This is one of my standards for training. But when you look at HDMI, the HDMI specification allows 6/100ths of an inch variance between all the conductors within an HDMI cable. Now, do you know the thickness of a US bill?
It's very, very small.
It's 1/100th of an inch.
Okay.
So, when you look at 6/100ths of an inch, take your bill, fold it over so you got 6 sides. Jason loves to laugh at me because I do this in my class all the time.
Right.
This is the thickness of variance allowed inside of the HDMI terminations. Now, unfortunately, your typical piece of gear, whether it's a cable box, an AVR, or a television, matrix, HDBaseT, doesn't really matter, typically takes 4/100ths of an inch inside of that device because they feel everybody else will do it better so they can be sloppy.
Yeah, of course.
And now everybody's sloppy. So let's assume we just have 3 devices, a cable box, an AVR, and a television.
Okay.
What does that math add up to? 3 at 4.
12.
Exactly. And what's the specification? 6.
6. So we're double.
We're already out of the gate. We're wrong.
Okay.
Which is why when you're dealing with extenders, the big advantage of HDBaseT, and we'll get into this again more next week, is the fact it has buffering built in to deal with this. But you still have to make sure that what you're doing here takes as much work out of that as you possibly can.
Right. So a lot of the things, the reason that we're so picky on how you do terminations for our equipment and whenever you give us a call is because we're primarily in the HDMI world. We're not really into the networking world or anything like that, except for, of course, like our spy clops
and an ancillary environment.
Cameras. Yeah. So for the most part, we are using the category wire not as data, but as
high-speed data.
Well, yeah, high speed, but for video data. And so at that point, we need to make sure that the termination is as good as possible. And like we've said today, taking all of these steps and using them in your regular networking environment,
it would be better.
It would make your life so much easier, a much more stable environment, because the less time that you have your network asking for more information over and over again, the more it can work.
The faster it works, and the easier it breathes.
Yeah. So Brent, I think we're just about running out of time, actually.
Yes, we are. They have asked us to get them a little bit shorter because guys are out there trying to make a living.
Exactly. So, guys, with that being said, we'd like to go ahead and thank you again for checking in on us today. We hope that we were able to, give you guys some good pointers on how to do some good terminations and what to keep an eye out for when you're doing it.
And in 2 weeks, HD-Base-T.
HD-Base-T. So we do. Next week, our next video, we're going to be talking about HD-Base-T and any other Ethernet HDMI extenders. So definitely come in, check us out on that next video. If you have more questions, guys, please leave comments on this video, either on YouTube or on Facebook. Let us know if you have any comments or questions or anything like that. Or again, give us a call.
If you got some good ideas on a show. I can tell you coming up, we've got HD-Base-T.
That's correct.
We've got a grounding episode coming up because we get a lot of phone calls on grounding.
Yep. We're going to be talking about just basic networking skills when you guys are out there doing installations for automation and whatnot. Yeah, we're talking about that. We're also talking about a couple other things. I think we're even having an RS-232 video coming up.
Yes, we do.
Talking about serial connections, and that's definitely
and IP control.
Well,
I'm an old man.
Brent's world. So, guys, again, thanks for checking in on us today. We're happy to talk about this stuff with you.
Give us a call.
Give us a call. Our phone number here is 386-255-0234. And then, of course, you can always give Brent a call on his cell phone.
386-846-7264.
So again, guys, thanks for checking in with us.
I'm Brent McCall.
I'm Adam Rogers. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.